What if your OSPF network was silently failing and you didn't know why? In this video, I'll show you the 3 deadly OSPF mistakes that crash networks, including the passive interface trap that blocks all routing updates. Want to troubleshoot OSPF like a Cisco TSC engineer? Let's dive in. OSPF v2 and OSPF v3 troubleshooting. Configuring the OSPF protocol on a Cisco router is a 2-step process. First, in global configuration mode, you need to activate the protocol with the command router OSPF, followed by the process number. Here, on our topology, we take the number 1. Then this process is entirely local to the router. Then, all that remains is to indicate the networks of the router's interfaces. It is important to remember that the protocol uses inverted masks. OSPF troubleshooting requires a good understanding of the protocol and how it works. As with any type of troubleshooting, you have to take it step by step. You should always start by checking that the router has established an adjacency with its neighbor using the show OSPF neighbors command. If there is no adjacency between 2 routers, then they will not be able to exchange routes. In this case, it is necessary to verify that the interfaces are operational and enabled for OSPF. And if they are, then we should see if they are configured in the same OSPF area and that they are not configured either as passive interfaces. The second troubleshooting component is the route table. If the adjacency between 2 routers is good, but by doing a show IP route, we do not see any OSPF route in the routing table, then we should check that there is not another routing protocol with a lower administrative distance and therefore a priority, which would run on the network. Because if this is the case, the OSPF routes, not being a priority, will not be placed in the routing table. If there is only OSPF running, then we should check all the networks it has to announce. If it is a multi-area topology, we should see if the areas are well connected to the backbone area, area 0. Because if this is not the case, then routers in this area will not be able to send and receive updates to other areas. And the last step in an OSPF troubleshooting is to check the routes it takes. If the routing table understands all the networks, but there is still a problem, then you should check the OSPF cost on the interfaces of the problem path. It should not be forgotten that if there are interfaces greater than 100 megas, then in this case, all interfaces above this bandwidth will have the same OSPF cost by default. The show IP OSPF interface command displays the cost of each router interface. We will now see in detail the first step of troubleshooting. On this topology, we have a neighborhood problem between routers 1 and 2. The show IP interface brief command allows you to verify that the status and protocol are up for the 000 serial interface, the one connected to router 2. Here, we can see that the link is therefore operational on layer 2. We will now check the layer 3 connectivity between routers 1 and 2 by pinging. In the example, we can see that the IP connectivity between the 2 devices is good. If the ping hadn't worked, then we would have had to look at the physical wiring of the interfaces and also check that there is, of course, the same IP subnetwork with the right mask. If so far all of them are correct, you can check the IP settings and the status of the interfaces with the show IP OSPF interface command, to be done on both routers. With this command, we can see that the router ID of R1 is 4 times 1 and that of router 2 is 4 times 2. To continue our troubleshooting on the good relationship of the OSPF neighborhood, we will check which interfaces participate in its deadlines with the command show IP protocols, which we do on the 2 routers. This command shows us the IP addresses or networks that have been activated using the network command. On the topology, we can see that the OSPF protocol is enabled on the serial interfaces of both routers. If the parameters are not identical at both ends, then adjacency cannot be done. This command also displays a list of passive interfaces. Here we see that router 1 has its serial interface 0000, the one that points to router 2, of defined as passive. This is why routers can't form their neighbor relationships, because a passive interface blocks routing updates. That is, the reception of hello packets. That's why routers can't be neighbors. Normally, you should rather configure an interface as passive if it points to the internet or if it is on the side of the direct users. In these two cases, it is not useful to send this type of packet. What's more, it can be a safety risk. Now that we have targeted the problem, all that remains is to do a no passive interface on the serial interface 0000 of router 1 so that the neighborhood can be done correctly and that the two routers can exchange LSA messages. Check the OSPF routing table. The next troubleshooting step is to check routing tables. In the example, router 1 cannot reach the networks that router 2 advertises. Their neighbor relationship is fine, but a ping to the 192.1 to 68.1.0 network from router 1 does not work. This would suggest that it may be missing a route in its routing table. If multiple routing protocols are configured on routers, then it is the administrative distance that will decide which protocol the router will use. Administrative distance influences the routes that will be installed in the routing table. If we do a show IP protocols, we notice that there are two routing protocols configured on router 1, EIGRP and OSPF. And if we run a show IP route of the network behind router 2, we can see that this route was learned via the EIGRP protocol because it has an administrative distance of 90, while OSPF, its distance is 110. This explains why router 1 will instead install the EIGRP route in its routing table. As a reminder, the shorter the administrative distance, the more confident the route. And to correct this problem, it would be necessary to remove the use of the EIGRP protocol on router 1 for the network behind router 2. OSPF path selection. Troubleshooting. Now, we're going to see the last step of OSPF troubleshooting. That is, path selection. A wrong path does not necessarily lead to a loss of connectivity, but in some cases, we would like the data to use a well-defined path. For example, a standby WAN link, the one represented with serial interfaces, can be billed by the amount of data transferred to it. And it can be a bit expensive if the data regularly passes through this link. When you have redundant paths in a network, you need to check that the traffic takes the path you want through the network. For example, on this topology, there are two links between the two routers, one at high speed for the production and one at low speed to rescue the first in case of a problem. It should therefore be ensured that the emergency link is used only in the event of a crash of the main link. It will be played on the OSPF costs of the router. If we do a show IP route OSPF, we see that the traffic crosses both links, because the interfaces have the same OSPF cost. This cost is seen just after the administrative value. Here it is 2 for both links, and the administrative value is 110 for OSPF. The network behind router 2 is therefore accessible from router 1 via the Gigabit Ethernet 0/1 interface and the Serial 000 interface. Because both interfaces have the same OSPF cost, load balancing will be used on both links. As the links are not of the same speed, the reason that would explain the same OSPF cost on the two interfaces would be this. who has been modified by a network admin, or the reference bandwidth is incorrect. As a reminder, the OSPF cost is calculated by dividing the reference bandwidth, which is 100 megabytes, by that of the interface. For example, with the two interfaces we have, one of 1000 megabits and one of 100 megabits, both will have the same OSPF cost of 1 if the reference value is set to 100. The Show IP OSPF interface command allows you to check the OSPF cost on the interfaces. Here, the cost is 1 on both interfaces. We notice that on the previous order, the cost was 2. Well, that's because it counts the cost to the network behind the router. So much so that here, it's only about the cost of the link. If you want to take one path rather than another, you will have to modify this cost with the IP OSPF cost command to be done in configuration mode directly on the interfaces on both ends. If we now do a Show IP Route OSPF, we realize that only the Gigabyte Ethernet link is registered in the routing table because the serial link has a higher cost. Its cost is 10BU1, which gives 11. Troubleshooting OSPF problems in IPv6. To end the course, we're going to talk about OSPF in IPv6. OSPF v2 is for IPv4, and OSPF v3 is the name for OSPF in IPv6. Its configuration is very similar to IPv4. The main difference is that OSPF v3 is enabled directly on the IPv6 interface with the IPv6 OSPF command. This makes troubleshooting it very similar to OSPF v2. The Show IPv6 Protocols command is used to check the IPv6 routing protocols on the router. The Show IPv6 OSPF Neighbors command displays the neighbors that OSPF version 3 discovers. The Show IPv6 OSPF Interfaces command is used to display the active interfaces and their costs. And the Show IPv6 Route command displays the contents of the IPv6 route table, which includes OSPF-specific routes. Here is a table which represents the small differences between the two versions of the OSPF. The two can coexist on the same router, but they will just be independent. That is, they will run in different processes. OSPF v2 advertises IPv4 routes, while OSPF v3 advertises routes for IPv6. OSPF v2 messages originate from the IPv4 address of the egress interface. In v3, these messages come from the link local address of the egress interface. For multicast addresses, v2 uses IP 2.4.0.5 and v3 uses FFOS 2.5. On routers that are elected in DR or BDR, the multicast address in v2 is 224.0.6 and v3 uses FFY26. OSPF v2 advertises networks after using the network command, while in OSPF v3, the command is IPv6 OSPF. In IPv6, you must activate routing with the command IPv6 Unicast routing to be done in global configuration mode. And finally, v2 uses either clear or MD5 authentication, whereas v3 uses its own authentication.